12 News is your local election headquarters. Now, we continue our Where They Stand series on WPRI.com and our 12 Plus Smart TV app. I'm Ray Bakari. Joining me today is Marcia Ranglin-Vassell, who is a former Providence state representative and one of 4 Democrats running in this summer's Senate District 4 special election. This election was called after the death of Senate President Dominic Ruggiero, who passed away in April, and the district itself contains all of North Providence and a tiny part of Providence. Marcia, it's good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So for my first question, can you explain for those watching a little bit about yourself and why you're running for state senate?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for that question. I'm a mom, a wife, a teacher, a fighter, and a former state rep, as you mentioned before. Listen, I am running because I am best positioned to continue the work, number one, that I started. I don't need on-the-job training. I've passed legislation. I've passed legislation. I'm a fighter. I know how to create coalitions inside the State House and outside of the State House. So I'm running really to continue the work that I started before I left 3 years ago.
And now looking at some policy, arguably one of the biggest bills aside from the state budget that lawmakers passed this session was the ban on so-called assault-style weapons. There was a little bit of a debate toward the end of the session between 2 versions of the bill, one that would have banned the buying, selling, manufacturing, and ownership of these weapons, while the version that passed the buying, selling, and creation, but not the possession of the weapons. Right. Where do you stand on that conversation?
You know, I'm abundantly clear on that. I ran for office in 2016 after the death of a young man who was shot and killed. That's why I ran in the first place. And so there is no gray areas in this. We ought to ban assault weapons totally. There is no place for that in our community. As a teacher, I feel like we're sitting ducks unless we ban this thing. Before I came here today, I actually just went to the sign-in of that ban. And as I sat there, and there were moments that I shed a tear. I cried because while it's a great moment, I started thinking of all the students that I lost to gun violence that were in my classroom, that were asking me for Jolly Ranchers. I thought of all of them in that moment. I also thought of my own families and my uncle who died. He was a cop who died from gun violence. So in that moment, as we pass what some consider watered down ban, I am grateful for it. I am grateful because our communities can be safer. But there's so much more work to do in ending gun violence, especially in the urban core, because we need to ensure that we end poverty. We need to really focus, and which is one of the work that I did when I was there, to focus on the access to mental health services and support. And, you know, so I'm excited about it, but there's still more work to do.
And just to clarify for those watching at home, you favored the ban on possession as well?
All of it.
Got it. Now moving on to the state budget, this was, in terms of the size, the biggest bill that lawmakers, you were in there at one point, so you know, and you were voting on a few budgets during your time in the legislature. And as you know, the conversations boil, especially when it comes to the budgetary picture, because it increases year to year. This past one was $14.3 billion with the B. You usually hear arguments like, oh, from one side, we should cut wasteful spending to reduce the size. From the other side, because we always have like a built-in deficit too, minus those COVID years. Some folks also say we should raise revenue by increasing taxes on the wealthy. This is a bit of a broader question, so you can elaborate. If you can give me one thing that you favor to try to address these budgetary issues our state faces.
You know, the budget is a moral document, right? It's how we treat our neighbors. It's how we treat the poor. And it's how we treat children. And so I have had an opportunity to skim through the budget. And there were parts of it that I was really, really hopeful and really happy about. We had some robust investment in education, and I really am appreciative of that. We had robust investment, $1 million going to CCRI, dual enrollment. I had students, shout out to all my students who were in the dual enrollment, now graduates. And so more power to that. I absolutely love that. I also love the fact that we actually expanded the need to feed more children. Many people know when I ran for office in 2016, one of the first pieces of legislation that I introduced April 25th, 2017, was to feed all kids. And at the time, a lot of folks thought it was a random idea. I knew it wasn't a random idea because I'm a teacher and I have students who come to school without food. And so there's always Maslow before Bloom. We've got to feed kids, right, before they can learn. So I'm really excited about adding more money to feed kids during the summer as well. I'm excited because there's money to expand after school programs.
Just to interject, Rep, to kind of go back to the overall idea of the question, what would you favor to try to address those budgetary issues in terms of the budget? Would it be maybe raising revenue?
Tax the rich.
So a wealthy tax or tax on wealthier residents?
Tax the rich. I've said it in 2016, and I may sound like a broken record, but the richest Rhode Islanders must pay their fair share. And so I like what is dubbed, what is called the Taylor Swift tax, right? We have to really, as I mentioned before, Ray, it's a moral document. And so addressing homelessness, addressing hunger, addressing mental health issues, those are not add-ons, those are priority. And so we have to fix those too.
And I should also mention, full disclosure, we are taping this post-session and before the primary. So sticking with budgetary questions, Providence is in the district, albeit a small part, but you represented Providence too, so I assume you'll definitely have a thought on this part of the conversation. Mayor Smiley had asked the General Assembly to let the city increase taxes beyond that 4% cap, but no higher than 8%, just for 1 year because they had that $15 million expense after the lawsuit with the school district. So it's a two-parter, but I'll start off with the first one. Would you have supported or opposed that bill?
Let me give you some breaking news that I read just coming here. The city council just amended that 8%. I think it's about 6 right now. So anything that's going to put burden on taxpayers and people that are really, really struggling, whether they be renters or homeowners, listen, I'm going to oppose that.
So you would have voted against that bill if you were a senator now?
I would.
And then the other part of it, there's also a lot of conversations that come out of this saying that the city could have probably done something else in order to raise that revenue and not have to rely on a tax increase with approval from the state legislator. Is there anything else the city could have done?
You know, when I drive around the city of Providence, there's a lot of unused buildings, commercial buildings, and we don't even know where some of those owners are, or they just come back to whatever. I don't know. We could really raise those rents, those taxes on those.
On the unused buildings? And then for my final question, pivoting away from budgetary topics, the state's facing a healthcare crisis, and in Senate District 4, Fatima Hospital, one of those hospitals, is in a dire strait right now. We've seen Anchor Medical shut down, community health centers in Providence shut down. And I'll keep this one broad as well because there's a lot of suggestions that people have, whether it's raising reimbursement rates for Medicaid or you know, just a whole host of other solutions. What does the legislature need to do to fix the healthcare crisis?
Well, I like what they're doing because I like first steps, right? But there's so much more to do. It's really, really difficult. People call me all the time. My primary care doctor that I've had for 35 years, I know I'm dating myself, but he's going to retire soon. So, you know, incentivizing those folks, I think, primary care doctors and people who is in the industry. I think it's a good way also to attract new people. Listen, I marched with my little grandson. I call him my little wing guy, Elias, at Butler the other day. We marched because that's something also that we need to fix. We need to also care for the people who care for patients, especially our most vulnerable. I'm encouraged because the budget this year offered more money, or some more money, I should say, to address the issue of mental health access and support. And so, I mean, one of the bills that I'm really proud of that I fought for 6 years while I was in the assembly was access to mental health care. And so Rhode Island now has a Trauma-Informed Schools Act, and that was what I drafted with my own hands. And so when we look at care, we have to look at it broadly because physical health is just as important as mental, emotional health. And so I am really encouraged by what the Assembly did, and I am ready to go back. Like, I'm ready on day one to go back and to fight because I am in the trenches. I teach full time. I'm not just a legislator or want to be a legislator. I'm a fighter. And I will make sure that all of North Providence and Providence, and I know you said it was a little piece of Providence, and we cannot forget that that happened because of redistricting, right, which really disenfranchised so many people, and oftentimes the people who need the most support. So I'm all about inclusion. So it's all of North Providence, and it's all of Providence. It's not just some of North Providence, or maybe none of Providence, because it's North Providence and Providence. And together, I believe we're stronger. And that's why I am positioned more than anyone else in this race to take this on and to take it on right away. I don't need training because I've passed legislation as I've indicated in the past, and I'm ready to do that. And that's why I'm here. I'm running, and I want people to vote for me.
And then as for the raising the reimbursement rates for Medicaid, support or oppose?
Listen, we have to raise the rate so that the people that care for the most vulnerable are able to practice their work compassionately. Listen, I have a family member who decided to leave the state, a doctor, because of the rates of reimbursement and all the rest of that. As I said before, we cannot pick or choose in this, because the providers are just as important as the patient. And we want to make sure that we, all of us, because we're consumers, right? We're patients, that we're accessing but compassionate, high quality care. And so listen, we got to tax the rich. We got to tax them more. And also, we can fight against a Trump policy right here in Rhode Island by protecting the people that we love and the people that we, especially our seniors and our children, right? And people that have given so much of this country, and we must not allow them to become invisible. I won't.
That's all the questions I had. Rep, I want to thank you so much for coming down here. It's been a pleasure to have you on.
Yes. Thank you so much. All the best. And I just want to say the election is July 8th. Go out and please vote for Marcia Ranglin-Vassell, fighter, mom, teacher. Thank you.
And thank you for tuning into this edition Where They Stand. Remember, 12 News is your local election headquarters. We also have the other candidates' interviews available on WPRI.com and our 12 Plus Smart TV app. For now, Ray Bakari, 12 News. 12 News is your local election headquarters. Now, we continue our Where They Stand series on WPRI.com and the 12 Plus Smart TV app. I'm Ray Bakari. Joining me today is Lenny, Cioe, who is one of 4 Democrats running in the Senate District 4 special election this summer. This special election comes after the death of Senate President Dominic Ruggiero, who died in April, and the district contains all of North Providence and a small part of Providence. Lenny, it's good to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me today, Ray.
So for those watching, explain a little bit about yourself and why you're running for state senate.
All right. So I'm a registered nurse and Democrat, and I'm running for state senate because I still believe, outside the perceived view of in the politics and the political scene, that it is a noble pursuit to serve the public and serve the communities that I live in and serve the state of Rhode Island. I've always held this belief, and that was my original belief why I ran. It's a different race now that it's an open seat. It's a very incredible experience. It changes you when you run for office. And if it doesn't, you're running for the wrong reasons. You meet constituents, and you realize the resilience they have and up against the struggles that they have, trying to pay rent, trying to buy groceries, trying to get health care. And they have this resilience to them that inspires you to work hard to help them get what they need and reach out to them and help them. And I've been doing that my whole life. So this is just an extension of where I want to go next.
Now let's talk some policy. Arguably one of the biggest bills focused on this legislative session was the ban on so-called assault-style weapons. This was a policy that the former office holder for this seat, Ruggiero, he opposed on the state level for years, saying that it needed to be done federally. He signaled some openness to having it be at least voted on this session. And we're seeing a little bit of a debate. Full disclosure, we're taping this before the primary and the last day of the legislative session. So there's two versions of the bill. They kind of debate on should there be a ban on just the sale and purchase of these weapons, or the sale, purchase, and ownership of these weapons. Where do you stand?
All right. So, Ray, I come from a different point of view, and I am not a gun owner. So it's a medical point of view. I've taken care of a lot of young men at Rhode Island Hospital who have been wounded or paralyzed by gun violence. And you see how it destroys their lives. And at the same time, I know a lot of gun owners, and it's their hobby, or it's something they enjoy. And the problem is, and I keep saying this, it's not about the guns. It's about the society has let a lot of young men down and a lot of young adults down. And we haven't helped them find a place in society. So it's really interconnected. It's not just about the guns. And if you want to look at our history, if you think about the Oklahoma City bombing, there was no guns involved in that. So, and mass shootings have become a public health crisis. So we really need to look at why this is happening. And like I said, I sat across a lot of my friends that are gun owners, and what they always tell me is it's not, you can make as many laws as you want, but the gun violence is still going to happen, and they obey the laws. So I really think that it should be an investment in our public policies. Like, the question is, why are these young men turning to gun violence against grocery stores, in schools? Why are they turning to this? And the clear answer is that we haven't built a society that has. We built a society that has abandoned these young men.
If I may just interject, Lenny, it is a topic that could have a whole interview of its own, but somebody watching this at home may say, he's running for state senate. This is a bill you have to vote up or down on. So if you were in the Senate, how would you vote on the assault weapons ban?
At this point, I think they're going down the wrong track. I really do. I don't think they're looking at the whole picture about guns. So
you wouldn't vote for the bill? I just want to clarify how you, whether it be the one that just bans sale and purchasing, or sale, ownership, and purchase. I just want to get where you stand on that.
Okay, all right, Ray, would you mind repeating it, please?
Yeah, no worries. So there's a debate right now between two versions of the bill. One being banning sale, ownership, and purchasing, and then the other version just sale and purchasing. Which one would you favor, or do you even oppose either?
I oppose both of them. I really do. I think sales and purchasing would probably where I'd be leaning to, but it's so much more than guns. It really is. And just to say a topic of ban guns, the violence is going to happen anyway, and we really need to look what the cause of the violence is.
Okay, let's move on to the budget. That's arguably the biggest bill that lawmakers have to vote on every year. The budget is currently sitting at just a little bit over $14 billion, and it's a bit of a broad topic, so I'll give you a leeway with whatever your answer is with this, because some say to lower the cost of the budget, or fill in a lot of holes with the deficits that we have, that we had pre-COVID and that we're having again now. Some say cut wasteful spending, some say increase taxes on wealthier residents. If you could give one thing you'd favor to try and address the budgetary issues our state face, what would it be?
Right. At this point, we have to all realize that trickle-down economics does not work. Period. End of story. We have multinational corporations in this state that we could be taxing 3% on their properties alone and help fill in the state budget. But because of the way that lawmakers feel, we can't tax wealthy people's, wealthy corporations' money because they'll leaves us in a deficit and putting it on the backs of middle class. And the middle class we are always taking the hit for any budget reform. We really got to get over that. This trickle-down economics. We have to look at the multinational corporations in the state and figure out how to get tax monies from them instead of giving them tax breaks, so that we can fill the holes in the state budget.
So increasing taxes on the wealthier to fill the
Yes,
holes.
but I'm talking about multinational corporations. Mostly because we have ExxonMobil, we have Amazon, we have a host of corporations that we could tax.
And then what about residents who have higher incomes? What do you feel about that?
Their property taxes alone pay for their towns, and I mean, within their income tax and all that. I mean, they do pay taxes, the wealthier residents. But it's the multinational corporations that get away with the most.
Speaking of taxes, Providence is in the district, albeit a small part. The city's having a tough situation with their budget. Again, we're taping this before July 1st. We're saying the city council will need to pass a budget by. Mayor Smiley's asking lawmakers to let the city increase taxes beyond that 4% cap, but no higher than 8% to account for a $15 million expense that stems from that settlement after a lawsuit with the school district. A bit of a two-parter here. Would you support, or would you have supported or opposed that bill? And would there have been a better way the city could have dealt with this?
Again, Mayor Smiley loves trickle-down economics. There's plenty of corporations within that city that he could tax more. And he could, Brown is under the umbrella of nonprofit, now they are Brown Health. He could increase what they have to pay in, and and the same thing with other corporations within the city. And again, it always comes to the middle class residents that end up paying most of the taxes. They always get hit, and it's unfair. We have to start punching up, not down, and that's what they have to realize, that there's all this money that they never tap into, and they leave it alone because, again, it's like we can't take the rich people's money. But look at all these corporations that are there. Brown alone should be paying more.
And just for the viewer at home, he's referencing Brown University, and a lot of the private colleges, they don't pay property taxes, but they pay a little bit to the city through an agreement called the pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes. So you favor increasing how much those colleges have to pay.
Well, Brown University is now Brown Health.
Right. And the hospitals, too, are part of
Yes.
this. So
look at the monies that they're bringing in. I mean, they went out of state to get more money. They bought two hospitals, St. Anne's and I forgot the other one they bought, but just to get more money in. So they're making money.
And then the other part of the question I want to get your thoughts on, I appreciate you answering that other part, because that answered my question of if there was another way the city could address it. Lawmakers still have to vote on that bill to give the city the privilege to increase taxes beyond the 4% cap and no higher than 8%. How would you have voted on it?
I would look at other avenue streams of taxing.
So you'd oppose that bill?
Yes.
Got it. Final question. This is up your alley because you're a nurse. The state's facing a healthcare crisis. It's caught the attention of state leaders, and it's a multifaceted issue. One of the hospitals affected by this whole healthcare crisis, Fatima, is in the district. And then we saw Anchor Medical shut down. A lot of people argue that the reimbursement rates being increased could help this. I also want to get your perspective, since you're in healthcare. What do lawmakers need to do to address the crisis?
So, Ray, you've followed my campaign for a while. What was my main thing that I ran on every single time?
You ran on healthcare.
Yep, and I ran on Medicaid reimbursements, and I rang the alarm bell. 3 times I rang the alarm bell. Think about how we could avoid this crisis if they had raised the reimbursements 7 years ago. We would have been avoiding this crisis. And here we are finally in a crisis, and they're paying attention. So, I'm a proactive person, not a reactive person. Had they been proactive 7 years ago, we would not be here. And it's a shame that it took Anchor Medical to close. It took Province Community Health Center shutting down all their smart clinics, all their clinics, a couple of buildings. Thunder Mist is in trouble. It's a host of buildings and a whole host of the backbone of healthcare in Rhode Island through the community health centers that are in trouble because the Medicaid reimbursements. And I do agree with the fact that they passed a Medicaid increase for primary care providers. But again, it was the taxes again are going to be taken out on the middle class through, I think, raising the gas and I forgot the other thing they're going to use. But again, they don't go after the corporations that they could be taxing to get money to fill this gap in for healthcare, and the stopgap programs that are needed in healthcare. And we have two more crises coming. We have Rhode Island Energy that is cutting off 65% of the people in Rhode Island Energy lost their medical protections. 44% of seniors lost their ability, lost their ability to stop shutoffs. They increased their rates by $200 a month. That's a healthcare crisis in the making. Because think about what's going to happen if you have you have somebody that's medically dependent on an vent and their electricity gets shut off or their gas gets shut off. So, and then the increase in the new medical billing. Blue Cross Blue Shield is raising their rates. All the different insurance companies are raising their rates, secondary to the tariffs on making drugs. So we have a huge healthcare crisis coming on top of the Medicaid reimbursements. And these small waves are going to turn into tsunamis if we don't act now and start taxing the multinational corporations in this city and in this state.
That was all the questions I had, Lenny. I want to thank you for giving us your time for this. I appreciate you coming down.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning into this edition of Where They Stand. Remember, 12 News is your local election headquarters. We have all the other candidates' interviews available on WPRI.com and the 12 Plus Smart TV app. For now, Ray Bakari, 12 News.